The LA Kings are in the playoffs. We discuss that and get your thoughts on a Feedback Friday on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We would love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Indeed knows that when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for the quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Terms and conditions apply. The LA Kings played game number 79 of the 82-game regular season, hosting the Calgary Flames. LA had a second chance to clinch a playoff spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs with a win after missing a chance to do so in Anaheim on Tuesday. And we had a bit of a surprise as far as the game day lineup to start off with. Pierre-Luc Dubois moved down to the fourth line center. He was joined by winger Alex Laferriere. Both moved down from the third line. Akil Thomas would join them on the fourth line. Blake Lizotte would center the third line along with Kevin Fiala and Trevor Lewis. The top two lines and the defensive pairs were the same as they had been since the return of Philip Deneau from injury. Cam Talbot was in net. But the big story as far as going into the game was the lineup change with the big offseason acquisition, Pierre-Luc Dubois, now the fourth line center for the LA Kings. As for the game itself, if you missed it, a quick recap. Kings came out strong against the Calgary Flames, looking to clinch that playoff spot. A sustained high-level effort for most of the first period, and the Kings would get a power play opportunity and would score on that first power play of the game to grab a 1-0 lead. Kevin Fiala scoring his 28th goal of the season, with Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe assisting. Just 55 seconds into the second period, the Kings would extend their lead to 2-0 on a goal from Victor Arvidsson, his third of the season. Philip Deneau and Trevor Moore getting the assists. And LA would go up 3-0 with Akil Thomas deflecting in a Matt Roy point shot for Thomas, his third of the season. And in the third period, Calgary would score their lone goal, made it a 3-1 game. Despite a lot of pressure, though, the Flames would not score again, and Victor Arvidsson would ice the game with an empty net goal, second of the game, fourth of the season. Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty assisting. And the Kings get the 4-1 victory. Cam Talbot turned aside 22 shots in net. And for the third consecutive season, the Los Angeles Kings have clinched a spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. As for the game stats in the win over Calgary, 4-1, LA gets the win. Shots on goal favored the Kings 30-23. Power play, Calgary was 0 for 1, while the Kings were 1 for 4. On the faceoffs, it was Calgary 26-25 over the Kings. Block shots favored LA 15-14, and hits were in favor of the Flames 13-10. So I've been doing this thing for the past few weeks or so. One word to describe the Kings' last game. So what was the one word to describe the 4-1 victory over the Flames, clinching a playoff spot? And I had to think about this one for a little bit. Usually they come to me pretty quickly. It wasn't relief, because I expected the Kings to make the playoffs. I really didn't think there was any chance that they would miss the playoffs. It wasn't satisfaction, because I expected the Kings to make the playoffs. So I'm not satisfied with them doing this. So I decided the word to go with is expected. The word expected is defined as to look forward to, regarding as likely to happen, anticipate the occurrence of, or the coming of. This was expected. And frankly, this was expected the last game against the Ducks. That unfortunately didn't happen, but it finally does happen. And just because something's expected doesn't mean you shouldn't be excited about it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be happy about it. You can be happy about things that you expect to happen if they're good things, and this certainly is a good thing. And look, You can't win it if you aren't in it. There are 16 other teams at the end of the season that will wish they were in a position that the Kings are in, and LA will be with 16 or 15 other teams that have a shot at winning the Stanley Cup. So the Kings are in. They've got a shot. What type of a shot do they have? Certainly is up for debate and something we'll certainly discuss going forward. Obviously, matchups have something to do with that, at least initially. But again, this was expected for the LA Kings going into the season. Ownership has spent near the cap. They've got a talented roster. The Kings did what they were expected to do. They're in the playoffs, but it's still something to be excited about. As for head coach Jim Hiller, what he had to say about the Kings clinching a playoff spot, he said, quote, "Everybody who's been involved has been a part of the team reaching the playoffs. I think everybody should be proud of that. It's a hard thing to do. More importantly, it's an exciting thing to do because now you get to take the next step. We've earned the right to take the next step. There's a lot of people that have a lot to do working behind the scenes everywhere to help get the hockey team to the playoffs. So everybody should be proud of that." End quote. And again, he's right. Even though this was expected, even though this is where the Kings should have been, this is what they should have accomplished. Again, there still should be a sense of accomplishment. They should be happy about it. They should be proud of it. The Kings making the playoffs 3 straight years is a pretty good accomplishment. Yes, it was expected, but again, now that they've reached this part of the journey, the destination, now it's on to the next thing, and that's the playoffs. So feel good about it. Be excited about it, Kings fans. We're in, and now it's on to the playoffs. Still got a couple more games left. Hopefully everybody stays healthy, and then we'll see what happens in the postseason. As for the 3 stars of the game against Calgary, I'm going to kind of take the easy way out, I guess, and pick all the goal scorers. My number 3 star is Kevin Fiala with a goal, his 28th of the year, also his team-leading 11th power play goal of the season. Now 71 points, just 1 point behind Adrian Kempe for the team lead. Kevin Fiala, my number 3 star for the win over Calgary. My number 2 star is Akil Thomas, 3rd goal in 5 games for the rookie. Awesome to see what he's doing since the call-up with LA, and we're going to talk a little bit more about him in the fan feedback portion of the show. But Akil Thomas, my number 2 star. And the number 1 star, Victor Arvidsson, for his first 2-goal game of the season. Obviously, just 15 games this year, 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 points. But Victor Arvidsson is obviously a player who has made a difference, and we have a question about him in our fan feedback portion of the show as well. As for the positive takeaways, the pluses from this win, obviously clinching a playoff spot. That's a huge positive. And I know there's going to be plenty of people out there, both Kings fans and outside, that say the Kings aren't going to go very far, but who knows? There's plenty of examples of teams who weren't expected to do much in the playoffs and have made a deep playoff run. Last season, the Florida Panthers absolutely backed their way in the playoffs. They only got in because the Pittsburgh Penguins choked, and they went on to not only shock the heavily favored Boston Bruins in the first round of the playoffs, they make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. As Kings fans, we know all too well that you never know what can happen in the playoffs. In 2012, nobody expected the Kings to beat the Vancouver Canucks, the President's Trophy winners, in the first round and then go all the way and win it all. Nobody predicted that. So you just never know. The playoffs in hockey are a different season. They're a different animal than the regular season. Go in hot at the right time, get the right matchups, and you never know what can happen. But the Kings are in. That's obviously the big plus and the big takeaway to take away from it. And again, 3 years in a row, it's not something the Kings do all that often. Last time they did it, 2012, 2013, 2014 was the last time they went to the playoffs 3 years in a row. And you know what happened in 2 of those 3 years. So obviously that's a big plus. I think more specifically, though, pluses to take away from this particular game, the Kings started strong and sustained it throughout the game, unlike what they did in Anaheim, where they started strong and then fizzled. Special teams were positive. I've said all along, I really think the X factor for the Kings is success on the power play in the playoffs. If they can get that, I think they can be in every game and I think do pretty well. And obviously the penalty kill, it seems to have rounded back into form. That's been the one big thing they relied on all season long. You had some balanced scoring. You had the big guys showing up in Fiala and Arvidsson, but you got some depth scoring from a 4th liner in Akil Thomas as well. So always nice to get some scoring from up and down the lineup. And Cam Talbot, off of what I thought was a poor performance against Anaheim, bounces back with a solid game. And also, I wanted to point out, I like feisty Kempe. Adrian Kempe was very feisty in this one, got into a couple of different scrums, got his stick up into a few faces. He shoved the Flames guy into their goaltender. I like feisty Kempe. I think, I talked about maybe coming into this game a little bit pissed off after the Ducks game. Kempe looked a little bit pissed off in this game, and I like that. I like feisty Kempe an awful lot. As far as some negative takeaways, some minuses, really the only negative from a team perspective for me was the Kings did go into a bit of a defensive shell in the third period. And then after the Flames made it 3-1, the Flames were able to keep the puck in the Kings' end a lot. It was like LA was just killing off a power play. And yes, you have to protect a lead, and I get all that, but you still have to work to get it in the other team's zone and keep it in their end a little bit. If it's just going to be in your end the whole time, it doesn't matter what your lead is. Eventually, they're going to score. Now, fortunately, the Kings were able to hold them off, get an empty net goal, and ice it. But can't go. It's a fine line to protect the lead late and also get too defensive. And I thought they got a little bit too defensive in the third period. And I have to mention PL Dubois on the fourth line. Obviously, this is going to be red meat for all those many detractors that he has, and justifiably so in a lot of ways. It's not a great look, frankly, for this guy to be our fourth line center. But in the end, Jim Miller can't worry about what a guy's getting paid, can't worry about how it looks, the optics of it. He has to put the lineup out there that he feels is the best to have this team be successful. And that if that means that PL Dubois is the fourth line center, then he's the fourth line center. But it is a bad look. It really is a bad look. All right, so who are the Kings going to play in the playoffs? We try to clear that up a bit, and it's a Feedback Friday. What do you have to say about the LA Kings? That's next here on Locked on LA Kings, your team every day. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stats for your business team or the best stars for your business team? Well, if you're building your talent roster, then you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. Sponsor a job and they'll match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description right when you post. There's over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows that when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. And that's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application, pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So we know the Kings are in the playoffs. What we don't know is who the Kings are going to play in the first round of the playoffs. Right now, there are 3 likely possibilities: the Edmonton Oilers, the Vancouver Canucks, or the Dallas Stars. If the Kings finish in third place in the Pacific, where they are right now, they will face either the Oilers or the Canucks, depending on who finishes second in the division. Right now, that is Edmonton. If the Kings finish in the number 1 wildcard spot, where they currently are tied with the Nashville Predators in points, who hold the number 1 wildcard spot, LA would face the number 2 seed in the West, and right now, that is the Vancouver Canucks. If the Kings finish in the second wildcard spot, they are currently 3 points ahead of Vegas for that second wildcard spot. The Kings would face the number 1 seed in the West, and right now, that's the Dallas Stars. They hold a 4-point lead over Vancouver for the top spot in the West. So Vancouver, 105 points, 3 games left. Edmonton, 4 points behind with 101 points, but 5 games left, including a huge game this weekend head-to-head against the Canucks. Kings with 95 points, 3 games left. They've got the Ducks on Saturday. I misspoke the other day, by the way, when I said the Kings could have swept the series against Anaheim with the win and clinching. Obviously, that was not the case. They've got the Ducks this Saturday. Kings have the Wild on Monday, and then they close out the regular season with the Blackhawks on Thursday. Nashville also has 95 points like the Kings. They've got 3 games left. And then Vegas with 92 points. They've got 4 games left. Vancouver, Edmonton, LA, and Nashville have all clinched playoff spots. Vegas has not at this point. Games of interest to watch from over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tonight, you've got the Predators hosting the Blackhawks. Oilers host the Coyotes, and the Golden Knights host the Wild. Saturday, Canucks at the Oilers. Huge, huge game. Go Edmonton. It's hard to say that, I know, but we need the Oilers to win that game. If they do, they got a shot at winning the division. If they don't, they probably don't. Predators will host the Blue Jackets. And then on Sunday, you got the Golden Knights hosting the Avalanche. If the playoffs started today, it would be the Kings against the Edmonton Oilers for a 3rd straight season. All right, let's get to some of your feedback, your emails on this Kings Fan Feedback Friday, and I'm going to read the emails in the order in which they were received, and it's possible that I had to do a little bit of editing for time reasons. Our first email comes from Mike. He is in Carson City, Nevada, and he says, after playing like crap against the AHL Ducks with a playoff clinch on the line, I'm officially done with this team until next year. This is not the 2012 team who struggled during the season, but were physically built for a playoff run with one of the best goalies ever to play the game. We should have invested in a Dustin Brown type player instead of PLD. I can only imagine the locker room atmosphere when the highest paid player on your team, excluding Doughty, is barely a top 9 forward. PLD makes nearly twice the salary of Moore, Deneau, Kempe, Arvidsson, and you can't say it doesn't have a mental effect on those players. They all have egos, so I'm sure they are a bit disgruntled. NHL players never really hold out under contract, but if I was Kempe or Moore, I might be tempted. If I was Byfield, I'd be asking for the moon this offseason. He's already better than PLD. My prediction will be swept in the first round. Blake and Hiller will get fired. Hopefully they'll find a trade partner for PLD, even if they have to eat 70% of his salary. He needs to go, period. Thank you, Blake, for building this team into a contender just to trip into a faceplant into the cement 10 feet before the finish line. Durzi, Velarde, Iafallo, Kupari in a second rounder, all for a guy who's on pace for 45 points and is a -10. Just Velarde straight up for PLD is laughable. Well, great to start the feedback with that positive email from Mike in Carson City, Nevada. Mike, I hope this was written in anger right after the loss to the Ducks. And I will admit, I was pissed after that game as well. And it lasted a couple of days. I don't know if it came across on the shows I did afterwards, but I was in a bad mood. That loss pissed me off. But I like I said, we've all said things, we've all texted things, we've all emailed things in anger that we, after cooling off, we sit back a little bit. Look, all the stuff you said about PLD, I get. But being out on the team, you're done. That's it. They're making the playoffs and you're done. That's it. Come on, man. Come on, Mike. Don't do it. Come on. Hopefully you've cooled off. Come back. Look, and if you really think the Kings have no chance, isn't it more liberating for you to watch the playoffs knowing there's nothing you're going to lose? Like if they do well, you're like shocked and you're happy, but you're expecting them to not do anything. So I don't know. I hope you're not serious when you say you're out on this team until next year. Don't do that. Let's go to Danny in Toronto. And always, look, I love all of our SoCal listeners. Obviously, you make up the bulk of the viewers and the listeners for this show. But it's nice to find Kings fans from other places, in North America and in the world. And I did want to mention, I did get an email from Noah, who was in Asia. And I said, Asia's a big place. Noah, where are you at? He did respond to let me know that he was in Vietnam. He's now back in LA. He says, I'm back home for a long playoff run, fingers crossed. But he apparently is moving to Vietnam at some point. So hopefully, Noah, the podcast can still be your lifeline to keep you plugged in on what's going on with the LA Kings as you listen from afar in Vietnam. But Danny in Toronto says, it's tough being a diehard Kings fan in this city. Thankfully, I have you and the All the Kings Men podcast to keep me up to date. Love your show and watch it on YouTube or listen during my commute. Thank you, Danny. He says, I want the Oilers. We need to have a winning mentality in our minds and should welcome a chance to play them. We win round 1 against the Oilers, and it'll give us a massive boost. Love the show. And along those lines, this from Sam and Vin in San Diego, who I met at a Kings game more than once. Great people. They say, hello and go, Kings. We came up for the last home game and brought our good luck charm friends, John and Rocio. Hope I said that right. To make sure the Kings clinched last night, and they did. It was also great to see Akil Thomas score his first home ice goal. Go Akil. As far as the playoffs, we are not afraid of McDavid or the Oilers team. We believe this team is playing at its best, or when this team is playing at its best, we can beat the Wonder Bread twins, McDavid and Draisaitl. We are more afraid of the inconsistency shown by the Kings team. Anyway, keep it short and sweet, and let's the playoffs begin. Go Kings, go. That was from Sam and Vin. So Sam and Vin and Danny, a lot more positive than we had from Mike in Nevada. And I love the spirit. I love the attitude. This is the way I'm going to handle it because we don't know who we're going to play. I'm rooting for the Kings to face Vancouver because I really think in my heart that's the team that they can beat in the first round. And as a matter of fact, I would predict that they would win that first round matchup. I believe in them that much against the Canucks. I don't feel the same way against pretty much every other team that they could face in the first round. But if it happens, if it's the Oilers, I'm ready to jump on board and say, you know what? Let's shock the world. Let's finally slay the dragon. Let's go. But until then, until I know it's Edmonton, I'm still going to be hoping it's Vancouver. But I love the optimism there from Danny and Sam and Vin saying, bring on the Oilers. We've got more emails to talk about, more comments on Pierre-Luc Dubois, that and more here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $290 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Life insurance may not be something you're thinking about, but you should because you never know what can happen in life. Be responsible and be ready. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Your life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius gives you an unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to give your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. The LA Kings face the Anaheim Ducks Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings. Our next email comes from Scott. He's in Simi Valley, and he says, it was nice to hear you give some praise to Juice for the great season he's had. Kempe is a joy to watch and really has become a fine, complete player. One stat I have not had the opportunity to check on is his goals are down, and of course, the opposition is keying on him more this season, but I'd like to know his shot attempt to shot on goal ratio in comparison to last season. It seems to me quite a percentage of his blasts have been just barely off the frame this year, and maybe that's something for him to work on. As for PLD, it's great that his play has been trending up under Hiller, and it's always nice to look at the positives in any player. If PLD's contract were comparable to, say, Trevor Moore's, all would be great, but no one should go to sleep on the fact that if the Kings let it ride with PLD past this summer, the cost will be twice as high to buy him out if they so choose. Yes, he's playing better. No, his contract is not his fault, but no amount of positive thinking can erase what could be a huge monkey on the back of the Kings' salary cap woes for years to come. Rob Blake has some work to do, and I think he will. The contract was a huge mistake, but I believe he will fix it as well as possible through a trade or buyout. P.S. How you liking Akil Thomas so far? I was the one who mentioned him earlier this season. Well, let's see. First, Scott, let me answer your question about Adrian Kempe. I did look it up for you. Adrian Kempe last season had 451 shots on goal. This season he has 485, and that's not through a complete season yet. That was shot attempts. Let me clear that up. Shot attempts for Adrian Kempe last year, 451. Shot attempts this year, 485. Shots on goal last year were 250. Shots on goal this year, 241. So his shot percentage is quite a bit off from it was a year ago. Last season, Kempe had a 16.4 shooting percentage. This year, it's at 11.2. So he is not putting the puck on net with the regularity that he did a season ago, even though he's taking more shot attempts, which probably explains why he's not scoring as much. However, as we mentioned, his assists and his points are way up. So at least there's that. As far as Akil Thomas, I also had a post on X from Augie kind of calling me out on this a little bit. Yeah, you mentioned earlier in the year, should the Kings call up Akil Thomas? You think he could help out? And I said, probably not. And I'm fine with that opinion. And I'm very fine at being potentially wrong with that opinion. I'm thrilled for Akil Thomas. He's a guy who's paid his dues. He's not a young rookie anymore. He's 24 years old. So it's now the time for him to kind of make or break it. He's gotten this opportunity. He's making the most of it. Awesome. I'm a huge fan of Akil Thomas, and I'm glad to see him doing what he's doing. That said, he's a bottom six guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody needs good, solid bottom six players. He's never going to be a star. He's not going to score at this rate, going forward, obviously. But look, there's a lot of players in the NHL love to have a Trevor Lewis type career. That's a great career. Now, he's never been a star, but he's played a lot of NHL hockey, won a couple of cups. So if Akil Thomas can turn into that kind of guy going forward for the Kings, I think that would be awesome. Homegrown guy, finally getting healthy and getting a shot, and he's doing the best with it. So I'm huge a fan of Akil Thomas and glad to see what he's doing. This next one comes from Edwin in Brea. He says, congrats on the Kings clinching a playoff spot during a roller coaster season. In a way, I'm shocked because I expected us to miss the playoffs. Kudos to Jim Hiller for making the ship float during a crazy storm of the season. Looks like the Kings will have the third spot in the division. Who are we playing? Most likely the Canucks. Oilers will win the division after an awful start. I say if the Kings are playing Vancouver, the Canucks are favored to win, and I agree because they have a Vezina finalist in goalie Thatcher Demko. He may not be 100%, however, skill-wise, he's better than our goalies. On a side note, 3 straight years of playoffs, 3 straight goalies for the Kings. Congrats, Kings, on making the playoffs. And finally, they can dance the night away. Go Kings, go always. That was from Edwin in Brea. And you might remember Edwin was the guy who was perturbed that the Kings were dancing after regular season games. He didn't like that, but he says it's okay. They're in the playoffs that they can dance now. So, great point on the 3 goalies in 3 different seasons and 3 playoffs for the Kings. Quick. And then you had Korpisalo, Copley, and now this year Talbot and Rittich. That's not a lot of teams make the playoffs 3 years in a row with 3 different goalies and then some. So that does say something about the Kings as a team. As far as being the underdog against the Canucks, I don't see it that way. I don't care if Thatcher Demko is playing or not. I think the Kings, again, match up really well against Vancouver. I think they've got a lot of confidence playing the Canucks. So I know you love goaltenders, and for some reason you love everyone else's goalies except for the Kings. It seems, Edwin, who is a beer league goalie, but I'm still high on the Kings if they face Vancouver. And our final, it's not an email because it was sent through X, which is an option for you guys to do if you want. This comes from @NickVro78. And he says, do you think Victor Arvidsson should be a priority re-sign for LA, assuming the money isn't there for Byfield and a goalie and both Arby and Roy? Well, to use your term priority, I would say no, Victor Arvidsson isn't a priority for the Kings this offseason. I think the priority is Quentin Byfield and getting him locked up long-term. Victor Arvidsson is going to turn 32 in April. He's going to be a UFA. This is going to be his 10th season in the NHL. And again, use the word priority. I don't think it's a priority. I think the Kings would like to have him back if he's willing to come back on a team-friendly deal, maybe a prove-it deal for him because he's missed so many games this year. Maybe he comes back for one more year in LA and then tries to show what he can do and then sign probably one more big or bigger type contract for him next season with another team or with the Kings. So he's not a priority, but obviously he's an impactful player when he's in the lineup. The problem is you can't make it a priority to sign a guy who's coming off 2 back surgeries and has had his issues staying healthy. So I love Victor Arvidsson's game. I love his tenacity. I love his hustle. I love his skill, but I don't love that he's not a guy I think that you can rely on physically. So again, would the Kings like to have him back? I think they would. Would I like to have him back? Yes, but the deal would have to be right. You can't invest, a 4 or 5 year contract. And I don't think the Kings have the ability to do that anyway. But getting Victor Arvidsson back, like I said, on a prove it type deal, on a short deal, maybe an incentive laden deal with tied to games played, I would like to see it. But we'll see. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're talking a lot about bringing him back, but we'll see in the offseason. Hey, thank you to everyone who took the time to email and also send the post on X. Really appreciate it. The show isn't possible without your feedback. Kings are hosting the Ducks this weekend. I will not be at the game. I've got a family event to go to. So the next home game I'll be at will be the Kings' first home playoff game. Excited to be able to go see Stanley Cup playoff hockey again. And hopefully we'll see you out there at Crypto.com Arena. And if not, hopefully you'll be joining us here on Locked On LA Kings throughout the playoffs for the LA Kings. We're in. It's exciting. Let's get excited about being in the playoffs and see where it goes. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Monday, we're going to recap that Kings-Ducks game from Saturday and preview Monday night's game against Minnesota. Plus, we'll update you on what the latest playoff matches look like from the weekend, and we'll also give you a rain report. On Tuesday, we'll recap the Kings-Wild game from Monday. Wednesday, we'll try and get a special guest. Thursday, we'll preview the regular season finale against the Blackhawks, and then Friday, we'll recap that game and have another Kings fan feedback show. Hope you'll join us for another exciting week, the final week of the NHL regular season. coming up. We'd love for you to stay interactive with the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. And as always, go Kings, go.